Hi, Mick McQuaid here. I'm interested in helping you get started on homework 2, and I've just put a new file, a new homework instructions file to facilitate that on my courses. So you should get rid of the copy that you have and download the new one. That's new as of Friday, February 15th. So homework 2, I think, is going to be the hardest uh, assignment in many ways. So that's why I want to spend some time going over it, explaining it, and trying to help you do it. It's going to be your first exposure to the 311 data, which is a massive data set, and your first exposure to R and RStudio, which are programs that you're going to use to visualize this data. So, let's talk about getting the data. So the thing that's different about this file than the previous version of the file is that Khalil Darwish has put a version of this file on Google Drive that you can download. I was able to download it in like 7 minutes, so I think you can download it pretty fast. Depending on your own, personal internet connection. So this is a big data set, as I said, and it's a famous data set. There's a lot of people have used it to do visualizations in the past. There are various articles about it. You can click on this link to get an article at Wired magazine about this data set and learn more about it. And click here to actually get the data set. You have to log in with your RIT credentials at this link in order to get it. You can also, if you have the VPN, you can also use this link to get it. I suspect this would be a lot slower, particularly for you. This is a server in Rochester. Okay, so there are some general instructions. Oh, here, let me just go to the instructions for homework 2. So there's some general instructions for homeworks 2 through 6. And they start out mentioning something called R Markdown files. So I want to first familiarize you a little bit with R Markdown before we do anything else. And before you do even that, you have to get R and RStudio. So I have a browser window open here and another window, and I've Googled R, just the letter R, and that brings up the R project for statistical computing. And I want version 3.5.2. It says here to download R, please choose a preferred mirror. And there are no mirrors in UAE. At least there aren't any mirrors listed here in UAE. I'll just show you. I get it from a mirror in the United States. When I click on a mirror, I get this window, and I'm on Mac OS 10, so I click on here, and then I get the latest release is R3.5.2. So I click on that, and I download that and follow the installation procedure. Now I've already installed it, so I'm not going to install it again. After you've installed R, then go back to Google, RStudio, download RStudio. RStudio is an environment for R. I suggest you download the free one unless you prefer to pay $29,995 per year. So I download the free one. It gives me the installers for supported platforms. I choose Mac OS 10 because that's my platform. And again, it downloads it, and I just follow the instructions to install it. And when I install it, it looks something like this. This looks a little bit different from the way it will look when you install it. And the reason that it looks a little bit different is because it's very customizable. And I've customized mine, and I can't even remember what the default looks like now. But it looks something like this. There are several panels, and the panels have different things going on in them. So if you don't have R already installed, you won't get all of this dialogue here when you first turn it on. The idea is when you first turn on RStudio, it finds R installed on your system and starts running R in here. And when I first started using R, I actually typed in commands here. So I would say, for example, library empty cars. Or data, I'm sorry, not library. What am I saying? Data empty cars. And then I would say something like t.test, what's something in empty cars? Miles per gallon, VS, data equals empty cars. And it was hard to remember all these commands, so there's something that I could do, and there would be an output of it. And it's hard to remember all these commands, so what I do now, and what I want you to do, and I can do visualizations this way also, but it's hard to remember the details of all those. So what I do now, and what I want you to do, is use a document that all your commands go in, and then you can render that document to PDF. Now, in order to render it to PDF, you have to run a couple of commands in RStudio. Let me just show you those commands. I have them in here. Let's see. I probably should have put this earlier on, where it says use TinyText. So this is on page 7, where it says use TinyText. You have to run these two commands in the R console. So you can just cut and paste these and run them in the R console here. Install packages. Oops. What did I say now? Install packages TinyText. So you run that. I've already run it, so I don't want to run it again. You run that command, and you run the command following it, which is TinyText install TinyText. And this, again, I've already run this, so I don't want to run it again because I've configured it, and so I don't want to mess up my existing configuration. So once you've done that, you can then create an R Markdown file. So this is an R Markdown file. If you create a new R Markdown file, it'll offer to create one for you. I'm going to change this to PDF. I'm going to leave this as untitled, leave the author alone, leave this as document. Click OK. And now a new window opens up, and this document is in that window. So this is an example R Markdown document just to get you started using R Markdown. And this Markdown document, R Markdown document, has a bunch of sections to it, or it has 2 sections to it, 3 sections to it. So it has, first it has an optional header block that contains information. You're going to have information specific to your homework assignment and with your name and the actual date in here. Then it has chunks of R code. This is the stuff that's hard to remember, so we basically cut and paste this stuff in there. Then it has sections, so this is a section heading. This double hash mark is a section heading, and this is the heading. This is the indicator of a heading, and then this is the actual heading itself, R Markdown. And then this is just text that you write. And then here's another R command, more text that you write, another R command. And notice that these R commands are embedded in backticks. So this is the backtick on your keyboard. It's usually in the upper left corner of the keyboard underneath the tilde symbol. Okay, so that's all the contents of this file. And what we can do now is render this file. So I'm going to click on knit here and say knit to PDF. And it's going to offer to call this untitled. I'm just going to leave that alone for now. And I already did this while I was practicing, so it's going to ask me if I want to replace the untitled file that's there. And now there's some code that's spun by real fast there. And now I have this document that's 2 pages long that contains the output of this document. So this is an input document you can think of, the R Markdown document, the RMD file. And the PDF you can think of as an output document. And this output document contains the text that we wrote, the headings that we wrote, the R code that we wrote, And very importantly, it contains the output of the R code. So here's the output of this, of the R command summary cars. This is actually the output of that. And I can include plots, and this is the main reason we're doing it, because we're going to be doing visualizations, and we want to include our visualizations in our output. And then there's a little note below here that was a note that was in the R Markdown file. So this is just something that gets you started on R Markdown, gives you some idea of what's going on with R Markdown. We'll talk quite a bit more about R Markdown in the days to come. Okay, so let me go back now to where I left off, which was with R Markdown files. So each homework assignment you're going to turn in an R Markdown file, that's the input document, and a PDF file, that's the output document that results from rendering the R Markdown file. So you'll turn both of those things in. And you're going to zip any files that you turn in. So there should be a single zip file named with the number of the homework as a lowercase Roman numeral. So for example, homework 2 should be enclosed in a zip file called 2.zip. My courses will add your name to the file automatically, so you don't need to add your file name, your personal name to the file name. You should use a full-featured text editor, or just use RStudio. Most of you, I think, will use RStudio. If you're an experienced programmer, go ahead and use whatever text editor or IDE that you prefer. I won't even know the difference. I'm basically going to be looking at your R Markdown file in your PDF, which can be created in a number of different ways. But for most people, it's just going to be RStudio. Save the files with the extension .rmd and make the file name match the Roman numeral of the assignment, but in lowercase. So for example, the second assignment will be called 2.rmd, ii.rmd, and so on. The beginning of the file contains the following info. So this is the header block that you just saw when we did the R Markdown example, except that it's got your actual name, the name of your assignment, your name, the actual date, and PDF document. Then you're going to want to include this chunk at the beginning. So this chunk is going to do a couple of things. First, it's going to load a bunch of packages. So there's a thing called the library that contains R packages, and that's how we do stuff, is with R packages. Each R package gives us a number of functions that we can run. So you're going to want to use the tidyverse, which is a package of packages. There are a bunch of packages within this, and then the data.table package. So you're going to load both of these packages. Now, these may not be installed on your system when you first start, so you're going to have to actually install these. In R, you can install packages using the package installer. Oh, I'm in RStudio here. Where's R? Oh, I didn't run R separately. Let me run R. Okay, so there's what R looks like by itself. It's not that easy to work with by itself, so you're going to probably want to use RStudio, and you can use the package installer like this. And I always suggest that you click on Install Dependencies if you do it like this. There's another way to do it, though, which I prefer. So you can get a list of all packages, or you can search for the package tidyverse. Oh, I have to first get a list of packages from CRAN. And then I can search for a package. And it turns out that I have the current version installed, so I'm not going to install it, but I could install it this way. Now, if I don't want to do this, I'm just going to leave R open here. If I don't want to do this, another thing that I could do is write in, I'll write it in this document here. I could say, if require tidyverse install packages tidyverse, dependencies, I have to spell that better, dependencies equals true. And then I'll say library tidyverse. Is that right? That might not be right. Let me just take a look here. No, that's right. Okay. So I can do this instead of just saying library tidyverse, and it'll automatically install tidyverse if I don't have it installed. Otherwise, I can just say, if I have it installed, I can just say library tidyverse, and it will it'll load the package. And then data table, it'll load the package. Then this reads in the file, and it puts it in a data set in R called NYC311. This is an assignment operator like you would see in a programming language, and you can read this as get. So you could say NYC311 gets the result of reading in this file, and names NYC gets names NYC. And then I put this into the string replace function, and I replace all spaces with dots, which makes it easier to work with the names. So that snippet is a chunk of R code that you can just use at the beginning of your file. And we'll talk about R code chunks, but be aware that you'll need to include this particular chunk at the beginning of every file that uses the 311 data. If you are connected to the campus VPN, which you're probably not, but the few of you who are, you could substitute the following command. That reads directly from the copy on Serenity. In fact, one nice thing about R is that you can read stuff directly from the web. Whenever your answer includes R code, write the code flush left, surrounded by code fences. So this is an example of R code. I think, let's see if will this work? Pairs auto. I'm not sure if this will work. I'm going to try it. Oops, I didn't mean to put it there. I meant to put it down here. Oh, okay, so it's not going to work because the object auto is not found. So I have to create the object auto. So I could do that. This is an example just to illustrate what it is. The MT cars data contains this auto. So did I say data MT cars here? Yeah, I did. So why doesn't auto exist? I'm a little puzzled by that, but it's not important. I can do this, plot MPG by cylinders. But in order for that to work, I'm going to have to say data equals cars. I mean data equals MT cars. Huh. Okay, I'm actually puzzled why that wouldn't work, but no matter. This is just intended as an example of code. And this is data that's built into R. Okay, if you want to include mathematical expressions, you can write them in LaTeX and surround them with $signs. And so you can say things like mu hat not. If you don't understand LaTeX, you can just write the expressions out phonetically. So for example, I said the above expression is pronounced mu hat not. You can just write out mu hat not and I'll know what you mean. So anytime that you want to do something mathematical, I don't want to discourage you. If you know math much, you probably know LaTeX. If you don't know much math, don't worry about it. And our Markdown is documented in these chapters of the book, so we're going to actually look at these chapters. I think is it 21 or is it 22? I don't remember, but we'll look at these chapters. We're going to familiarize ourselves with the R Markdown format more. Okay, so for this homework assignment, you're going to give a preliminary description of the 311 data, and it should include pictures and tables and a data dictionary. And it should be presented in an R Markdown document called 2.rmd, zipped in a zip file called 2.zip, along with its rendered version 2.pdf. And you'll need to investigate the nature of the data using whatever means you can think of, such as Googling. A data dictionary gives definitions of columns. So for example, a column containing zip codes contains either 5 digits or exactly 9 digits with a dash between the 5th and 6th digit. A column containing borough names contains only the following entries. I should mention that New York, for those of you who are not familiar with New York City consists of 5 boroughs, and the names of the boroughs are Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. And those are the parts of New York City. And so there is a column containing borough names. This is a tough assignment. There's no question this is a tough assignment, and I'm only too happy to help you with this. You may want to use a remote server. So I have a fast laptop. I have a laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM and 40 gigabytes of free storage. And so I have no trouble working with a 4.4 gigabyte file. But if you have an older laptop, say with 4 gigabytes of RAM and your storage is all maxed out, you're going to want to explore one of the following options. So Serenity is a machine on campus. It's on the Rochester campus, so I'm not sure how fast your access to it will be, but you can get to it by the VPN. Arliss is a cluster of machines on the Rochester campus that you can get access to. Not all students have accounts on there, but I can get you an account on there just by saying that it's for a class. Some students use AWS. Amazon Web Services offers a good deal for students. It's free for the first semester or something like that. And Google Cloud is free for the first 200 hours that you're using it. The problem with Google Cloud is people don't remember to turn the service off when they're not using it, so you run out of free time. But you can use any of these options to be able to run R faster if your laptop is a problem. You shouldn't let your slow laptop get in the way. I already mentioned you should use TinyTech, and you would install it. And then after you install it, you never refer to it explicitly. R just uses it to render PDFs. You should use fread. It's much faster than read.csv. Our textbook talks about using read.csv. Read.csv is a very slow function. And fread, in addition to being faster, also does some sophisticated data wrangling. So it's worthwhile to do it. And here's a way to use it. This is similar to what I just showed you before with the tidyverse. You should avoid using the city column. The city column is just a sinkhole for your time. It has a lot of misspellings, a lot of odd entries that don't correspond to any definition of city. You can try to clean it up, but my suggestion is just drop it. You should drop columns before you drop rows. You should avoid duplicate rows. There actually aren't any duplicate rows in this, so you don't really strictly need this part here. You should use section headings. So I mentioned before that a hash mark is a main section, a double hash mark is a subsection. You should use chunk names. So here's an example of a chunk with a label. The label is initialized, and we had chunks here. Let me just maximize this. So this R chunk was named setup, so that's the label for this chunk. This one was named cars, and this one was named pressure. And so when we run these chunks, when we run these chunks, the names of the chunks appear in here, And then if there are any errors in our code, they appear in between there, so we can tell which chunk the error occurred in. So it's worthwhile to name the chunks or label the chunks. You may want to sample data. So you're likely to make mistakes, and it's very time consuming to wait for a mistake when you have 4.4 gigabytes of data. So one thing you can do is just create a sample. If you've created NYC311, you can use this command. Just cut and paste this command into the R console, and you can create a sample of 10,000 rows. Use Xtable. Well, that's not so important. Xtable will prettify your output, so it'll make it look nice, but it's not absolutely necessary. Use the sample file to start. So there's a sample file called ii.rmd and a matching output file called ii.pdf on my courses, and those are under the homework directory. Let's take a look at those actually. I'm opening ii.rmd just in a plain text editor. Oh, and I've got transparency turned on, so let me turn off transparency here. Okay, so this is an example file that you can start from. It has a bunch of stuff in it already. You need to do more than this for full credit. You can't just turn in the sample file and expect to get full credit. Okay, so you should at least fill in all the places with parentheses for a B and use your imagination to add more for an A. And you can render this file. You can just open this in RStudio and use the knit button to render it. So this just makes it possible to shrink the typeface, blah, blah, blah. This is very, very unimportant stuff. You just run this. Then you want to put in an introduction, initialization. Here we describe the data with both a sample and data dictionary. Here we produce a table of just some relevant columns of data. Here's where you would put the actual data dictionary that you create. Here we explore the columns in the data set. Yeah, here are just some examples of exploration. Here's a crosstabulation. Some discussion, more crosstabs. Now it says more core plots, but I don't see where I've included a core plot. I guess I'm sort of expecting you to figure out core plots. Do I have a core plot here? No. Okay, but anyway, you can just run this, and let me show you what the output of it should look like. Oops, wow. It's taking up the whole screen there. Let me see if I can make that take up just a portion of the screen. There we go. So if you press the knit button when you've got that in RStudio, this is what will come out the way it is right now. Okay, and you've got to do more than just this. This is just a little, some little basic stuff to get you started. Okay, let's see what else is in here. So use the sample file to start. So there's that sample file, and there's a matching output file. You can use that to compare. Make sure you have a working directory, and you can use these commands in the R console. This is only if you don't have R Markdown. I mean, if you don't have RStudio. If you have RStudio, you can just say open file in RStudio. Let's just do that. Open file. And in my case, it is under ISTE782 HW2.rmd. Okay, so this is that same file that I just opened in the text editor. Looks like there's a mistake here. Oh, no. Okay, so you should be able to reproduce the ii.pdf exactly if you've installed all the relevant packages. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of error messages. And then you should locate the parenthesized instructions in the ii.rmd file and begin expanding the file. So this will require you to explore R and ggplot2 and the other packages. So try to really improve on this file before turning it in as your homework too. And we'll go over some more of the things that you can do with this file. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for your attention.